Hello, everyone. My name is Rushika Bhatia, and I'm the co-founder and editor at SME 10X. Today is our first ever webinar, so thank you all for joining us today. Before we get into our session today, I just wanted to take a minute to explain the context of why we're doing this. We know that there's a lot of information being thrown your way, and as an SME, it can be quite challenging and confusing to find a path for yourself, with the current situation. That's exactly why we decided that we want to bring an expert to you to analyze all the information out there and without making any assumptions, give you the information and the right advice to move forward. That's the reason we're doing this. I also want to take a minute to explain the format for today. So I'm going to introduce our expert. We went live with this format a week ago. We put it out there to you guys, to the audience for questions. We were live on LinkedIn, we were live on Facebook, we were live on Twitter, and based on all the audience interactions, we've put together a bunch of questions that we will be answering today. Before that, I'm going to introduce our expert, and she's going to present for a few minutes. So just to re-emphasize, please do share your questions with us. You can do it on YouTube, you can do it on LinkedIn, you can do it on our website. So yeah, please keep it interactive. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce our expert. Please join me in welcoming Bianca Gracias.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Rushika. Thank you for the introduction briefly. Thank you for taking time out to come and attend our very first Ask the Expert series. As you, we are very excited as well to be bringing this to you. My name is Bianca Gracias, and I'm co-founder of a very intelligent legal consultancy formed in the UAE out of the Emirate of Ras Al Khaimah called Suits and Advisors. Fun fact, we were named after the really cool TV series Suits. I'm sure most of you must have watched it at some point in the past 7 years. In my recent past of 16 years in the UAE, I worked with Emaar Properties, local law firm Hadif and Partners, and the very renowned Al Ghurair Investment. About 6 years back, Suits and Advisors was set up to address the need in the market for providing good quality legal consultancy services without designer price tags. I'd like to extend a very warm note of gratitude to SME 10X, Meeta, Rushika, Nadeem, and Anil for working so hard and putting this Ask the Expert series together, where we can have a platform to be able to offer you a very informative session today. Before I start, I'd like to say that the objective of today's webinar is to highlight some of the critical legal risks that business owners and employees are facing in the current scenario of today, and try and address these as optimistically and within the legal bounds as we can, whilst providing you as much as accurate information based on the laws as much as we can. I'd also like to highlight that this session is not meant to provide any specific legal advice to you or financial legal advice. It's only meant to be informative in nature. As Rushika also mentioned, at the end of the webinar, we will gladly address and field all the questions that you're asking us in our live session on all the various digital media platforms. So let's start off, and I'd like to engage this webinar by citing a couple of real-life examples that I have encountered myself for purposes of illustrating legal risks. The first example I'd like to give you is where a business owner that owns a gymnasium was asked by the government in early March to shut down without any prior notice. The gym owner has rent to pay, salaries to pay, expenses to field, and he has no relief. So what does the gym owner do in this case? The second illustration I'd like to highlight is where a salon owner providing women's salon services also has had to shut down without prior notice. Therefore, she cannot provide in-person services, something that's her bread and butter. She has bills to pay, staff to pay, but no income. What does a salon owner do in this case? What are her remedies? If you can see, there's a small screen setup that shows remedies that you can also refer to whilst I'm discussing the various current legal risks right now as well. As legal advisors, when we reviewed both these cases, when they were brought to us, there were a few questions we asked the business owners. Questions such as, do you have a business plan in place that addresses business continuity? I.e., if you get hit by a risk, is there a way in which your business still continues? Is that addressed in your business plan? I guess the first question we should have asked is, do you have a business plan to start with? The second question we asked was, do you have insurance in place, whether it's business interruption insurance or risk insurance, civil authority insurance? What kind of insurance do you have to protect any risks that adversely affect your business? The third question which we asked was, do you have a reserve fund in place or a contingency fund or an employee savings fund? Can you create alternative streams of revenue for your business? Do you have an online presence? And how fast can you digitally transform your business? As you can see, all these questions can also get a normal person thinking. If the COVID-19 situation hadn't occurred, all of you would have just poo-pahd me and said, this is never going to happen. Why should we even worry about these things? Because most of us are optimistic by nature, especially where we own our own businesses. However, as we've seen with the current pandemic, adverse situations do occur. And therefore, the one thing that this is teaching us right now, as we go through this difficult or rather fluid state of our existence with our businesses, is that we need to prepare for the worst. And we need to identify risks in advance and address them the best way we can. Now, coming back to the business cases of the gym owner and salon owner, a few key areas were identified that required immediate attention. And these were addressed as follows. For their rent, and mind you, I'm only going to address the few key areas just for the purposes of getting your brain juices flowing of how we thought about creating remedies for these two business owners. For the rent, we contacted the landlords and agreed flexible payment of rent for one case, and for the other, we agreed additional free rental period that was then negotiated to be added to the end of the lease. This provided them with some kind of fluidity or liquidity, if you will, for the interim as far as their rent is concerned. For employees, some were put on unpaid leave with their consent, some on reduced leaves also with their consent, and other employees were incentivized to do the following. For the gym in particular, get members to take online subscriptions where trainers would train clients online, and as a bonus, the gym would offer free meal planning as an incentive for members to sign up and take online training packages. For the salon owner, what she did was she started releasing videos on beauty products that she had available to sell and available to deliver to her clients. This was one stream of revenue that she quickly capitalized on. She also started posting natural remedies on her website to engage her clients on recommended skin and hair care routines. So as you can see, the two main concepts that these business owners did was quickly digitally transform, find alternative streams of revenue, and find ways to engage their audience and keep them engaged. Separately, these business owners also contacted a reliable insurance advisor to look through all the risks policies and other insurance policies that they have, and to try and identify if they could address the risks that were affecting them and if they could initiate claims at all. Now, apart from these examples I just discussed, businesses, I'm aware, are also facing other legal risks, which I'm sure you'll have many questions at the end to ask me about. Other legal risks include the ever so predominant debt collection issues. This has always been prevalent in the Middle East, but now it's just escalated with the current pandemic situation. For startups, they have a risk of where investors are hesitant to invest. They want some kind of reassurance from the startups or the founders as to how their investment would be secured or protected. We're also seeing, or we're going to see, defaults on loans. which is why, as you may have seen, the UAE Central Bank has quickly released a huge stimulus amounting to approximately 100 billion US dollars to support the economy. Another legal risk we are seeing is lack of inventory. Manufacturers, suppliers, especially those of essential goods, need to quickly stock up and maintain their inventory. Having no products to supply to consumers, besides being unnerving to the consumers, is also a risk for the manufacturers or suppliers. And for businesses that have no online presence, we don't know when we're going to come out of this. If your consumers are not engaged until we come out of it, there's a risk that they could forget you. I'm not saying they will, they could. Another very predominant legal risk I want to address very specifically is the spreading or believing in fake news, engaging in gossip, rumors. As you know, this is strictly prohibited under UAE laws. If you have not seen the news on the direct media account, Twitter account, Instagram account, or website of the UAE authority, I'd strongly recommend that you do not share it. Question the source of any social media post that you receive, and only then decide whether you can share it or forward it. Now, as we know, the UAE government has been very proactive and immediately moved all government agencies online, and we should take a leaf out of their book at how quickly they've digitally transformed, and they're still continuing to engage all the residents and nationals of the UAE. They've launched a 171 Tawassul service, and they've released new regulations and policies to help support the current scenario and the needs of the residents. And a huge shout out goes to the UAE government for being so supportive and digitally transforming to help address the current situation. In addition, the Emirates of Abu Dhabi and Dubai have also released additional stimulus packages for businesses in their own Emirates. If I can ask for the slide for preventative measures to be pulled up very quickly, I'd like to show some of the ideas that we've put in place for businesses where they could perhaps think about creating a plan B. Just a list of preventative measures or alternative ideas. Create a business plan. If you create a business plan, you will also address contingencies or risks that could affect your business, and you will always have a plan B for such cases. If you don't have a business plan, I'd strongly encourage you to create one as a business owner. If you don't have a business plan, you don't know where your business is heading, you won't be able to hedge any risks that come your way. The second thing you should do is identify if your business can create alternative streams of income. If there is one thing this pandemic is teaching the whole world and all business owners, is that you cannot rely just on one stream of income. Neither can you have one target market, unfortunately or fortunately. So some food for thought would be to think about your business, whether you can develop alternative streams of income for yourself, and whether you can scale geographically, whether it's developing your base where you are or scaling cross-border. And of course, digital transformation is what I come to next. Can your business scale digitally? If you don't have online presence, I'd suggest get online and try and engage your consumers online, because if it's a business where, say, for example, you get clients by creating events and you can't do that right now, advise your consumers or your network of what you're going to do in Q3 or Q4. What exciting events are you going to participate in? How is that going to benefit them? Get those creative juices flowing and engage your consumers. Give them informative or educational tips that can benefit them in any way. Also think about setting up a reserve fund. Setting up a reserve fund, which is equivalent to 10% of your net profits, is something that's a requirement anyway under UAE companies law. Of course, it's not strictly enforced by the Dubai Economic Department, but as a legal consultant, I would definitely recommend, if you are a business owner, especially a small or a medium-sized enterprise owner, do consider setting up a reserve fund. And whilst you're at it, if you can afford, set up a contingency fund or even an employee savings plan, which could come handy on a rainy day or rainy days, if you will. Get insurances where you can for all your business activities. How you can best address risks is either fortifying your contracts, which I'm going to come to in a bit, or getting insurances in place. Make a list of your worst case scenarios. What can possibly go wrong? Say, for example, you sell flowers. What possibly can go wrong? Say the flowers arrive at customs and there are insects in the flowers. What will the customs do? They'll throw the entire batch out. What's my plan B in that case? Say the flowers have some artificial coloring in them. They are to be delivered to a bridal event, and the bride is allergic to the color blue, and the flowers are in the color blue. What's your plan B in that case? So as you can see, you have to think out of the box. Go out of your comfort zone a little and think, what are the legal risks? What is the worst case scenario for my possible business transactions? What could possibly go wrong? If you can consider ISO certification, please consider ISO certification. ISO certification helps set out standard processes for your business that can help also give reassurance if you are a startup and going to pitch to investors, for example. By the way, for ISO certification, you don't need to be in a particular sector or at a particular stage in your business. ISO certification will help provide your shareholders, your investors with enough security that you can actually manage your business in a proper processed manner, and you know exactly where you're going. Fortifying all your contracts. Right now, given the current pandemic situation, everybody's clamoring to review their contracts, and God bless those who don't have any contracts in place. For those of you who have contracts in place, of course, you're running off to see now whether you have force majeure provisions and whether you have provisions to help you exit or get payments in a timely manner. However, if you have had these reviewed prior with a legal advisor, you would have actually fortified your legal position. I always say it's always cheaper and sometimes even free to contact a legal advisor before the fact than after you have a legal risk affecting you. If you do have a good legal advisor in your network, I recommend you connect with them and have business contracts in place for all the transactions that your business is going to engage in. And if you already have contracts, then have those reviewed so you ensure they're fortified to cover all possible legal risks that are foreseeable. Also connect with your network, with your consumers, with your friends, with your business associates. Connect with them digitally, connect with them on the various platforms. Let them not forget you and your business, even if it's a small information tip that you put up. It's a small photo, a motivational post that you put up. Promote what sets your business apart. Educate your network, why they should be dealing with you, why they can trust you, and why you're going to be the best business in your sector once this pandemic situation dies down and we're all up and running. And for those employees, I would say don't lose hope if you're being made redundant or you fear losing your job. You can always think about starting your own business. Just think about it. Some of the best businesses we know were started in the Great Recession that we had of 2008 and 2009. Think about WhatsApp, Uber, Instagram. We can all take leaves or pages out of these books. I welcome your thoughts and any questions you may have now in the question and answer session whilst I pass this over on to Rushika. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Bianca, for those insights. I think that was really great. So while you were doing your presentation, I managed to compile some of the questions that we had, and I wanted to start with something, and I wanted to clear the air around this because we've received a lot of questions on this subject. So Bianca, can you shed some light for us on what exactly does the law say about A, paid leave, B, unpaid leave, C, salary reductions, and the fourth one is layoffs?
It's a very valid question and probably the hottest question there is right now going on for employers and for employees alike. The one thing that I'd like to cite is there was a ministerial decree issued on 26th of March 2020, where the Ministry of Human Resources and Emiratization in the UAE categorically stated that employees could only be put on unpaid leave, their salaries reduced, whether temporarily or permanently, or only based on their written mutual consent. So employees can't be put on unpaid leave or their salaries reduced, whether temporarily or permanently, without them being in consensus. And if they are in consensus, this does not mean an email or a letter or a public announcement in the newspaper saying, I'm going to reduce the salaries of my staff. That is not what the ministerial decree says. It's very clear that you need to have written consensus, i.e., an amendment or an addendum to the existing contracts that you have with your employees. Only then does it qualify to be an amendment to the contract, and only then can you put, as a business owner, can you put your employees on unpaid leave or reduced leave, whether it's temporary or permanent. I hope that answers the question, Rushika.
That does. And Bianca, I have a question coming in live from our website. We have Victoria, and she's asking a question on the same subject. She says, are there any minimal payment amounts that a company needs to give their employees if they are being terminated in the current situation? So for instance, is a private company entitled to cover an employee's rent, etc., so that they can survive in the current situation? I also have a related question onto that. Bianca, I'm just going to add that on here. A question from Elizabeth, and she asks, adding on to Victoria's question, employees obviously might not be able to find a new job in the current market. So does that mean that the current company has any sort of obligation to make sure that they're able to survive?
Right. What the ministerial decree that has recently been released obligates employers to really do is keep them on their visa. That's the one thing. And if housing, like physical housing, is being provided, I'm not talking about housing allowance, I'm talking about physical housing being provided, or food, actual food being supplied and provided, the employers are under obligation to continue with these benefits. If we're talking about allowances, it's entirely up to the business. If your employees agree, or from the employee's perspective, if as an employee you agree to reduce salary or unpaid leave, that's entirely up to you. But you are entitled to stay on the existing company's visa, benefit from actual housing, actual food, up until you get alternative employment. And then coming to the second question that you have about the rents, the company is not obligated to pay rents if that's what you've agreed in terms of reducing your salary. We talk about reduction of salary as a whole, not in components under the ministerial decree.
Superb. Thanks, Bianca. I hope that answered your question, Victoria and Elizabeth. I'd also like to quickly just add in here that if any of the questions, if you have any follow-up questions with the responses that Bianca is sharing, we will be sharing our email address, mine as well as Bianca's, at the end of the webinar. So please feel free to email us for any further clarifications. Bianca, I have another question coming in via our website from Vijaya Cherian, who works for CPI Trade. And she asks, what happens to people on non-compete clauses who are on a contract, not full-time, but don't have work now because, for instance, a training institution has closed down?
So normally speaking, in a normal circumstance, the ministry and the courts are very particular about non-compete clauses. If the non-compete clauses are drafted in a manner that's very generic and intended to take away the livelihood of an employee, the courts will not allow it to be enforceable in any case. However, recently we've seen in a few cases that we've been part of where employees have gone and filed cases for being terminated. The ministry is now stating that no non-compete clauses will be enforceable. This is a very fluid situation. It's developing as we are speaking. But this is based on our own experience where the ministry is advising employees that if they're terminated, non-compete provisions as a whole, no matter what they state, are not going to be enforced.
Superb. Bianca, before we move on to a different question, onto the same subject, I just want you to as well clarify to our audience what happens to freelancers that are working, on a project basis. I'm sure there are a lot of cases right now where freelancers are either due to be paid or not getting paid in light of the current situation. So, what are my rights as a freelancer?
And that's a very valid question, and one that's very close to my heart because I'm a very strong supporter and quite passionate about small businesses and startups. When you use the term freelancer, however, it makes my heart skip a beat because I'm not sure whether you're talking about freelancers that are licensed with a freelancer visa or the freelancer license, or you're just talking about people who are operating under the radar. So for people who are operating under the radar, I cannot comment on that particular situation because you're in a high risk situation because you should have gone and got yourself licensed to begin with. If you want to perform any commercial activity in this particular country, you need to be licensed. I guess that's the same for all countries, generically speaking. Coming back to the UAE and to the question that Rushika is asking, as a freelancer, as long as you're properly licensed, and to the extent that you've got a good contract in place, you can definitely make a claim. Now, on that same subject, I'd just like to offer a free legal tip, if you will. If you are a business owner in the UAE, and you're contracting with another business that's in the UAE, the Dubai International Financial Center, which is the DIFC, has very conveniently set up what we call the Small Claims Tribunal at the DIFC courts. What they basically do is, if you are a small and medium-sized business owner and you have a claim that's less than 1 million dirhams, you can go by yourself without the need for a legal expert or a lawyer. You can go yourself directly to the Dubai International Financial Center, pay 5% of your claim value. Everything's in English. If you want, you can appear in person. You can file your claim online. You can appear by video conference, and they address the situations or the issues that they get normally in about 3 months. So I'd say if you are a small business owner, then you definitely need to take advantage of this initiative, whether you have a freelance license or any other kind of license. If your transaction value in your contract is going to be less than 1 million dirhams, put a clause in there to say that any disputes under this contract will be referred to the DIFC courts. If you don't put this clause in, you don't opt in, you can't really take your claim and go before the DIFC courts. So that's just a free tip for you. Does that answer your question? A bit long-winded, Rushika, but I hope it answers your question.
No, that was great, Bianca. I have another question coming in from YouTube by Gina O'Hara. It's a great question, actually. It asks, is there any clarity with regards to the stimulus package and how does this impact SMEs?
Well, there is a stimulus package released by the Dubai and Abu Dhabi Emirates, like I mentioned to you just a short while back. Some stimuluses released by Dubai. Let me quickly pull my paper up and mention to you. Dubai free zones actually are benefiting from 6 months postponed rent payments, where they've directly gotten the leases from the Dubai free zones. They're refunding security deposits and guarantees. Fines are being cancelled, and installment payments are being facilitated in Dubai free zones. They're also allowing for the temporary movement of labor. Some other initiatives that Dubai has included are the refund of 20% of customs fee imposed on imported products in Dubai, which I know for sure will benefit a lot of small and medium-sized businesses. They're also giving permission to renew commercial licenses without mandatory renewal of lease contracts. So that should help small and medium-sized businesses as well. Also, there is going to be a reduction in the water and electricity bills for as long as this situation concludes. I think the discount is about 10%. And for those of you who are tuning in from Abu Dhabi has also released initiatives. They've suspended real estate registration fees till the end of the year. They've waived certain commercial and industrial penalties. They've suspended tourism and municipality fees for the tourism and entertainment sectors till the end of this year, actually, in Abu Dhabi. And they are providing a rebate of 20% on rental values for restaurants, tourism, and entertainment sectors. And one more special exemption they're providing in Abu Dhabi is an exemption to commercial vehicles from annual registration fees till the end of the year. The other Emirates have not yet declared or released stimulus packages that we are aware of, but Dubai and Abu Dhabi have been very proactive.
Bianca, you mentioned free zones. Can you clarify which free zones? Do you know which ones they are?
The Executive Council has specified that this goes across Dubai South, Maidan, Dubai Silicon Oasis, DMCC, JAFSA, DIFC, and the World Trade Center for now. Mostly all the Dubai-based free zones.
Superb. Okay. Another subject, Bianca, I want to touch upon very quickly is, and you mentioned this in your presentation as well, was debt collection. Now, this is obviously another subject that's on everyone's mind at the moment. I also have a question coming in through our social media channel from Murtaza, who asks, in a situation where a client owes you money and you have the purchase order out, how do you deal with that? I'm sure this will be beneficial to all the SMEs tuned in. If I have a client or a purchase order and I'm owed money, how do I deal with that situation?
This is a very valid question, and actually, regardless of the pandemic, it's a situation that exists very predominantly in this part of the world. And the main reason is because people don't follow up. They don't have a specified process in place for payment collection. If you issue invoices, it can't be, inshallah, one day he will pay me. It can't be left on an inshallah basis. If you have issued an invoice, it's not paid in 15 days, follow up, follow up, follow up. Have a consistent and thorough follow-up process that you institute as a preventative measure. And if they do not pay by 30 days, then you should seriously commence litigation or formal legal action, I would say. Issue them with their payment reminders, issue them with a legal notice, and start the dispute resolution in the DIFC courts. I hope Murtaza, I hope you have your dispute resolution clause as DIFC if your purchase order is 1 million dirhams and less. Another thing that I would strongly suggest is if the counterparty keeps saying to you, I'm going to pay, I'm going to pay, I'm going to pay, ask them to provide an undertaking on their letterhead that categorically sets out how they're going to pay you, when they intend to pay you, or better still, if you can sign a settlement agreement for, say, money that's outstanding or fees that are outstanding for more than 3 months, insist that you sign a settlement agreement. That way you know whether the intentions of the other party are genuine or not. If they don't sign a settlement agreement, then they have no intention of settling with you, in which case you definitely should go down the legal route to collect your money.
Superb. Bianca, another question that's come in on through our YouTube channel from Raz Islam, and he asks, is the government offering any support with regards to VAT payments?
Well, like I said earlier, it's a very developing situation. We've not received any direction from the FTA up until now. However, for monies that have already been received, I see no reason why these cannot then be transferred onto the FTA when your VAT payments are due. But I do understand you've still got invoices outstanding and the monies have not been received. If they're not paid in due course, you just have to claim them as bad debt under the VAT regulations. That's all I'd have to say. But for now, to directly answer your question, there are no relief or delayed offerings given by the FTA, not as yet. That's not to say it won't be released. It may or may not be the case. We'll just have to keep an eye out.
Super. I have a question coming in, and to everyone that's watching, just want to say that we are looking at your questions. We've got quite a few questions, and I'm going to try and go through all of them in today's session. Bianca, my next question is from Hazel Fernandez, and she asks, with regards to rental property, I understand that 6 months rental fee postponement in Dubai has been implemented. However, does this also stand for offices that are under private ownership?
Not necessarily. I do understand that government-owned organizations like Al Wasl are offering these kinds of incentives. It's not, however, a regulation that's released by the Dubai government, and private owners are not yet bound to follow any 6-month suspension. It's not yet being enforced, not that I know of. But again, we don't know if the regulatory authorities and municipalities in each emirate, or in Dubai, the Dubai real estate regulatory agency or the land department may release regulations. We're not sure. It's a developing situation also.
Great. Also, Eugenia Kane asks, what is the stimulus package for companies under DED?
Under the Dubai Economic Department, as far as I know, they are allowing for now permission to renew commercial licenses without mandatory renewal of the lease contracts. And they've frozen the 2.5% market fees that were levied on all facilities and licenses operating in Dubai. They've also cancelled the requirement of bank guarantees required to be submitted before the authorities. In some cases, they've reduced it. In some cases, they've cancelled it. They've also reduced municipality fees on sales at hotels from 7% to 3.5%. They've exempted fees from being charged to companies for postponement and cancellation for other events in 2020. These are some being enforced by the DED. One way in which, Eugenia, you can keep up with it also is to call up 171, which is the Tawassul line that's been set up by the UAE federal government. It's meant to connect all residents and citizens directly to all government agencies. They also have a WhatsApp number that I can't remember right now, but if you just look up 171 Tawassul, you can call up and get instant information from any government agency instantly.
Bianca, I'm also going to quickly bring up another question on the subject of guarantees, since you touched upon that. We had another question on YouTube from Gina O'Hara, which asked, is there any ministerial update with regards to bid bonds from the government at the time of RFPs?
Not to the best of my knowledge. I've just been going through my notes here, where I haven't seen any specific incentive or ministerial update. But if you drop me an email on my email that will follow, I'll keep your question in mind. And if something comes up, or feel welcome to follow the SME 10X LinkedIn page, where we're going to post regular updates as well to any ministerial decree updates that are going to come on from now onwards. We'll try and update you as soon as we can.
Super. Bianca, I'm seeing a lot of activity and a lot of people circling around the topic of free zones. So maybe we can come back to that for a second. There seems to be a lot of interest around that subject. I have Virendra asking the question, are the free zones considering reduction in licensing fees?
Well, from whispers, I can say yes. From the background, none of the free zones have come out directly and said, but as we know, they do offer incentives from time to time. None of the free zones have come out directly and said, yes, we're going to offer you a reduction in your licensing fees. Apart from the stimulus package that was released by the Dubai government with respect to the Dubai free zones, no other free zones have actually come out and released any specific circular notification to say they're going to provide any relief or stimulus packages or incentives.
Great. All right. I think we have time for two last questions, Bianca. And these questions again are around the topic of employee rights. I have MG asking, an ex-employee cannot exit the country due to travel restrictions. The visa was cancelled before the shutdowns, and the grace period is soon to expire. Will my company get fined if the employee overstays?
Can you ask the question again, Rushika?
Sure. So I have a question which asks basically a situation where an ex-employee needs to exit the country. The visa is about to expire, and the question is, will the company get fined if the employee overstays due to the current travel restrictions in place?
Not that I know of. Actually, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed has gone out and made a statement that can be available freely online from WAM, which is the official news media agency, where he's actually quoted that fines will not be imposed for residents that are overstaying because of the current travel ban. Does that answer your question, Rushika?
I hope that answers MG's question. Again, Bianca, another question. This has come in anonymously on our website. For the temporary salary reduction, does this also affect gratuity payments? And if yes, how will that be calculated?
It should not affect your end of service benefits or your gratuity calculations because it's only temporary, assuming that you will not resign or be terminated during the period of the temporary restriction. The law is not yet clear if you are fired during the temporary restriction period, whether your gratuity will be calculated on the new basic or the old basic. I assume for the purposes of fairness, equity, and justice, the courts, the ministry would adopt the earlier basic. A case can always be made. However, once this situation expires or it ends, this pandemic situation, and your salary goes back to what it normally was, your basic, so would your basic. So ideally speaking, your end of service benefits, your gratuity should not be affected.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to try and, Bianca, I'm going to try and squeeze in our last couple of questions. I know I said last question 2 questions ago, but I'm just trying to get everyone's questions answered. I have Santosh D'Souza and, Santosh. And the question is, the employer didn't pay last 2 months of salary. And now if they're proposing a 50% cut in salary, what are the rights as an employee? I think this is a brilliant question because we haven't addressed the rights from an employee's point of view. So Bianca, if you can answer this question, please.
Thank you for your question, Santosh. It's a very valid question, and I'm sure the response will hopefully benefit a lot of employees out there, as Rushika said. From an employee's perspective, if you haven't got paid for 1 month, I'd be concerned if I were in your shoes. And if I'm not paid for 2 months, then I would want to get online on Tawfuk's website and file a complaint or call up 800-60, which is the ministry's hotline, and speak to an advisor there to say, these are my circumstances. I'm on a limited or unlimited contract. My company is based in a free zone or on mainland, and I haven't got paid for 2 months. It's better to address your specific circumstances sooner rather than later. If the company is then proposing temporary cuts, you as an employee need to make a decision whether you really want to sign on the temporary reduction letter before getting paid or you want to get paid first. An interim solution would be file a complaint with Tawfuk. You don't need to wait. You'd rather get paid sooner rather than later.
Thanks, Bianca. I also had a question from Jason, which was along the same lines. He asked, what can employees legally do if they've not been paid their salary for a few months? I think Jason, Bianca has just answered that question. So I hope that answered your question as well.
Can I add to that just in case I wasn't clear? The Ministry of Human Resources and Emiratisation has a separate branch. That service is called Tawfuk. I hope I'm getting my Arabic pronunciation correct. You can actually, as an employee, go online there and register a complaint and have it resolved online. Now, since everything has moved online, it's moving pretty quickly as well. And in terms of resolving disputes take approximately, in the normal scenario, they used to take 2 to 3 months to resolve. And now I'm hoping, because everything has moved online, everything is much more efficient and resolved in a much more efficient manner. But I'd say if you have an issue with your employer as an employee, speak to the employer and ask them to pay you. If they don't pay you, go and file the case, because you'd rather do it sooner rather than later.
Excellent. Thanks, Bianca. Okay, I think this is going to be our last question for today. I promise I'm gonna stick to that commitment. I have a question coming in from Bish Ray, and this is a great question as well because it's from an employee's perspective. Is there any news for employees who have been out of the country and who are going to overstay for over 6 months because of the current situation? Are they going to be able to re-enter the country without facing an entry ban?
It's a very, very valid question. Although the regulatory authorities have specifically not addressed this particular issue yet, and it's a very valid issue, I'm sure they would take into consideration all these circumstances and yes, provide extensions to the rule and allow residents to come into the country, even though, say, they're facing a situation where they haven't been able to enter because their visa expired perhaps whilst they were outside the country. So in conclusion, I'd like to say it's not yet addressed specifically by the regulatory authorities, but this is a fluid situation. Let's stay tuned and watch as the story unfolds and develops.
Great. Thank you, Bianca. And once again, I'd like to thank everyone that joined in and, asked questions. We do hope that this benefited you all. And I'm really sorry if I missed out any of the questions. Like I said earlier, we were more than happy. We're more than online. We'll be sharing our email addresses after the webinar. So please feel free to drop us an email with any more questions that you have. I know Bianca will be more than happy to answer them after the session. Thank you all for joining us. If you have any feedback, suggestions, or any other comments that you'd like to share with us, please feel free to do so. And that's all from us signing off. Thank you.
Thank you.